One of my favorite genres of all time is the strategy RPG. Now, when I say this, I don't mean turn-based games like Final Fantasy or Pokemon, though I do love those series. I mean tactical games like Fire Emblem, XCOM, and Final Fantasy Tactics. Ever since I played Fire Emblem on the Game Boy Advance, I've been in love with the genre. However, it's a very niche one. Most games labeled as strategy RPGs or tactical RPGs are usually just turn-based games, and yeah, those are strategic, but not SRPGs. The only big game for a while that came out that wasn't Fire Emblem or XCOM was Wargroove, which isn't bad, but it never scratched that itch. However, since 2020, the genre seems to have been revitalized, with games like Fire Emblem Three Houses making it mainstream, and games like Unsung Story, Troubleshooter, and Dark Deity getting popularity on the indie side. There's even more coming out in the future, with Veneris Tactics and Arcadian Atlas on the indie side, and remakes of the first two front missions, Live Alive, and Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Academy coming out this year. However, there's one project that's been on my mind since it was first announced, and with its prologue demo now out and ready to prove itself, all I have to say is, everyone, welcome to Demo Rush. I think a lot of people have wanted something akin to Final Fantasy Tactics for years. The series wasn't really supported as it only had 3 games as well as a PSP remake. However, it has a very strong fan base and one that probably would give Square anything to make a new game. And while Triangle Strategy isn't that, it's pretty damn close. Triangle Strategy is a breath of fresh air from Square Enix, being a tactical RPG co-developed by them and Art Inc., who developed the true PlayStation 1 classic
No one can stop Mr. Domino.
as well as Tactics Ogre, I guess. It's also produced by Tomoya Asano, who has worked on other Square titles such as Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default. Surprisingly though, Triangle Strategy doesn't feel like either of those games story-wise, and almost feels like a blend between Fire Emblem and the darker Final Fantasy titles. With that said, I guess we're jumping straight into the good. The story of Triangle Strategy was actually a really pleasant surprise. I mostly expected it to be a
Fight Kingdom, save the world
plot, but it actually got quite a bit deeper than that. Taking place in the fictional land of Norzelia, the game focuses on the new Lord of House Wolford, Serenoa, who has been arranged to marry the Princess of Esfrost, Frederica, to bring peace to the continent after the end of the Salt Iron War. As Serenoa, you focus on both your interpersonal relationships, as well as the relations between the countries of Glenbrook, Esfrost, and Hyzan to try to bring them together. What I really like is how your choices, both big and small, affect what happens in the story. There's even a route split where you go to either Esfrost or Hyzan, and depending on which country you go to, you get a different ally to join you on your journey. This is thanks to the conviction system, where depending on how you act, characters will treat you differently and will be more or less likely to side with you. Take notes, BioWare, you don't want to fuck up your next Mass Effect or Dragon Age. There's only one major conviction choice in the demo, and that's whether to go to Esfrost or Hyzan, but you can actually persuade your allies on where to go depending on what information you have and your relationships. It wasn't easy getting people to go to Esfrost, I'll tell you that. The game also has a lot of dialogue, which I'll come back to later, but Square seems to have taken cues from visual novels, surprisingly. If you don't want to press the A button for an eternity, you can press ZR to make it auto-advance, and if you miss dialogue, pressing L will bring up a log so you can read past events. Another cool feature is that pressing X lets you read some small profiles about the character speaking and lets you see the gorgeous artwork of them. And there are a lot of men that are my type. Moving on to the actual gameplay, it plays very much like Final Fantasy Tactics, so it seems Square has been listening at least a little bit. However, there does seem to be a bit of Fire Emblem influence as well, which surprised me. It does away with Tactics' job class system, with each character having a preset class, but this wasn't a huge issue to be honest. Characters move across a grid-based battlefield, and while there's no weapon triangle, certain characters do have weaknesses to some weapons. You can also simulate the attack first if you're unsure about what to do, which is honestly very welcome. Most characters also have a passive ability that can be used. For example, Anna's Act Twice lets her do 2 actions on her turn, and Gila's For Those in Need grants more healed HP to those that were under 50% health before Cure Wounds was cast. Characters can also support each other by attacking the same target when they're on opposite sides. This is even better if one of the characters is behind the enemy, since attacking from the back grants a critical critical attack. You aren't safe from this though, since enemies can also do this. To compensate for this setback though, you can choose which direction your character will face at the end of their turn. Being on higher terrain also gives increased damage, so keep that in mind as well. There are also terrain hazards that affect gameplay, such as frozen ground and puddles, which you can change depending on what moves you use. This game also screams tactics, since pulling off tactical moves earns you kudos, which you can exchange for items at the encampment, which is essentially where your store, smithy, and other stuff is. You can't buy stuff a lot in the overworld, so be sure to visit the encampment before battles. I also like the concept of having to actually stop on a space to pick up enemy loot. It really makes you think about if it's worth it or not. The music is also pretty good, though it occasionally just kind of blends in a bit too much, but it always sets the mood right, so props to that. And finally, for the good stuff, the graphics. If it wasn't obvious enough, Triangle Strategy uses the Octopath HD 2D method that's also going to be used in Dragon Quest III Remake and Live Alive. It's going to be 50-50 whether you like it or not, but I think it looks great for the most part. But this also leads us into the not so good stuff. Jesus Christ, turn down the bloom. I really think there should be an option to change some of the settings for the HD 2D look, kind of like the RE engine, because looking at this kind of bloom for 6 hours can be straining on the eyes. And you didn't mishear me. I played this demo for 6 hours. Now, this is if you do both routes and explore everything in the demo, but even if you don't go to one place, the demo is still 4.5 hours long. To be fair, the main campaign is planned to be 50 hours, but can you stop with the long demos, please? My poor heart can't take it. Also, while I like Triangle Strategy's story, holy shit, it's a slow burn. There are cutscenes that are so long that my Switch started to fall asleep during them. On top of that, all of the side chapters are cutscenes, which just adds more to the slow burn. I like slow burns and think some of the best films use this storytelling method, but it doesn't work well in a video game since it's an interactive medium. Literally half of my time playing was story and the other half was gameplay. And that's if you count the exploration phases as gameplay. Now, the exploration phases aren't bad, I think they're pretty okay, especially since you get some valuable information from them. It's just that they're long with a lot of dialogue. I do like this little Pokemon like Sparkle for items though, this is cute. Don't mind me, just a lord robbing your house. There does seem to be some minor frame rate issues, but weirdly not with the game. It's with the splash images. This is the funniest thing because usually it's the other way around. This is probably just a me thing, but I found the turn order UI very confusing. I'm probably just dumb, but it just made my brain melt and I ended up memorizing the turn order on my own. I would change the switching between attacks and items to exclusively the L and R buttons. I was accidentally switching between menus when I just meant to go up or down. The voice acting is hit or miss. It can be really good or laughably cheesy.
But I forget myself. Our time is nigh, Lord Wolfort. Congratulations, my friend.
I cannot say for sure what repercussions this may have. What I do know is that the people rejoice for us and harbor hope for the future.
It's way too far into production to change, but it's honestly a very minor problem at the end of the day. Finally, and this will be a huge problem, the fonts. I am not joking, the font. See, it looks alright on a TV screen since it's high definition and not squeezed down, but when the font gets sized down, it's so hard to read. I can't imagine what it's like for nearsighted people or people who just have trouble reading in general. I think there should be an option to either bold the font or change it to something a bit more readable. I know a lot of these changes probably won't happen, but I think it's something Square should keep in mind for future HD 2D games. Hell, if there's a Triangle Strategy 2, this stuff would be great to apply. But overall, what do I think about Triangle Strategy so far? Despite the very long story segments and awkward UI decisions, the gameplay of Triangle Strategy is enough to hold itself on its own, and the story is at least good enough to pay attention to. Plus, the visual novel cues do at least make the long story parts somewhat forgivable. The graphics are hit or miss due to how the HD 2D model works, but it was mostly a positive for me. Plus, the game's art and world building are fantastic compared to some other games out there. However, make sure you have some time on your hands because fuck, it's long. Overall, Triangle Strategy's prologue demo gets a 4 out of 5. It's good, but it does have some issues that could be fixed in the future. This puts Glitched in first, Triangle Strategy in second, and Resident Evil Village in last. If you have a demo that you think is worth looking at, please tell me in the comments below or send it to this email address right here. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Be sure to hit that notification bell, and I will see you all in the next thing I do. Bye bye.